My parents sold my childhood home without asking while I supported their debt, so I bought the house back and evicted my sister. Overnight, I'm a 27-year-old guy, and ever since I graduated, I've been the one quietly keeping our family afloat. I wake up every morning at 6 a.m., brewing my third cup of coffee before heading to my first job, then hopping straight into my second, just so the bills get paid on time. Mortgage, utilities, credit cards, groceries, none of it is small. I cover it all. Meanwhile, my parents never have to worry about deadlines or late fees. I've been their safety net for as long as I can remember. And honestly, I never minded. At least, that's what I told myself. It's not that they were unkind. Not exactly. They would smile, pat my shoulder, and say things like, "We're so proud of you, honey, but you don't have to stress so much." Or worse, brush it off as if I were just doing what any responsible child would. It's expected, isn't it? My dad would chuckle, as if my sacrifices were mundane, unremarkable. And my mom, always with her hands in someone else's business, would add, "You're so reliable. Sometimes I wish Liam could be more like you." Liam, that's my younger sister, our golden child. Golden. Yes, but only because she's never had to worry. She breezes through life, spending money she didn't earn, breaking things she didn't pay for, and somehow emerging unscathed from every mess. She has her little room in the house, her friends over all the time, and a sense of entitlement that makes my stomach twist with quiet resentment. I'll never forget the way she laughed the other night, tossing her designer bag onto the couch as if it were the crown of our home. And yet, despite my quiet frustration, I remind myself why I do it. This house, our childhood home, is more than wood and brick. It's where birthdays happened, where snow fell against the windows, where I learned to ride my bike in the backyard under Dad's watchful eye. I love it. I want it to stay ours. And I tell myself they would never sell it without telling me. Of course, they wouldn't. But then last week, during a casual conversation, my dad laughed and said, "Maybe someday we'll have to sell this place, you know. Things have been tight." I felt that familiar lump in my throat, but I forced a smile, nodding along. Surely he was joking, right? Things started feeling off a few weeks after that comment. I noticed my parents whispering late at night in the kitchen. Voices low, hurried, like they were plotting something I wasn't supposed to hear. I'd catch them glancing at me when I walked in, quickly smiling and pretending nothing was wrong. My stomach twisted every time. I kept paying the bills, juggling overtime shifts, and covering little emergencies, leaky faucets, car repairs, groceries, while feeling more and more like I was invisible. Just a utility for everyone else, Liam, as usual. Floated through life, untouched by responsibility. One evening, she plopped onto the living room couch with a bag of takeout and said, "You really need to chill, you know? Mom and Dad worry about enough already. You're always acting like you're saving the world." I gritted my teeth. "Someone has to keep things from falling apart," I muttered, but my voice lacked the bite it should have had. She just rolled her eyes and went back to scrolling on her phone. Completely unbothered by the silent weight I carried for this family, it wasn't just Liam. My parents had started making more offhand comments, little lines that stung. "We've been thinking about making some changes around here," my mom said one morning as I poured cereal. "Things are expensive, you know. Maybe we'll need to adjust our priorities soon." My hands froze on the bowl. My mind screamed, "What do you mean?" But I forced a laugh, playing it off like it was nothing. Because I had to. Because the idea that they could even consider something without talking to me felt impossible. The house still smelled like home. Faded perfume from my mom's candles. The wood polish my dad used on the floors, but it now felt smaller. Like every corner was shrinking around secrets I wasn't supposed to know. I spent that night staring at the ceiling, heart pounding, thinking about all the late nights I'd spent keeping this family afloat, while whispers and unexplained plans floated above me. Something was coming, and I didn't know if I was ready for it yet. I pushed the unease down, convincing myself I was being paranoid. This is my home. They couldn't sell it without me knowing, right? I found out the truth the worst way possible, through a neighbor. I was walking back from work one evening, exhausted, thinking about dinner and whether I'd have time to fix the leaky faucet before heading to my second shift. Mrs. Klein waved me over from her porch. I just wanted to let you know, she said, her voice hesitant. I heard your parents sold the house. My stomach dropped. My heart slammed against my ribs like it was trying to escape. I blinked, unsure if I had heard her right. Wait, what? I croaked, my voice betraying the panic rising inside me. She nodded gently, like she was delivering some kind of condolence. A couple of weeks ago, someone came by with the paperwork. They closed the deal yesterday.
Ow, my knees felt weak.
I clutched the railing, trying not to fall over. The smell of the street, the crisp evening air, even the faint scent of Mrs. Klein's garden, all blurred together. It was unreal. How could they sell it? Without even telling me? I had been paying everything, keeping this family afloat, and this was how they thanked me. I stormed home, barely noticing the crunch of leaves beneath my shoes. Liam was sprawled on the couch, phone in hand, smirking when I burst through the door. Hey, she said casually, like nothing had happened. You look tense. Did something happen at work? I felt my blood boil. Did you know about this? I demanded, my voice shaking. She shrugged, flipping her hair over her shoulder. Mom and Dad said it was for the best. You worry too much. That smug, careless tone, the same one I'd hated for years, cut deeper than I could have imagined. I cornered my parents in the kitchen, every ounce of betrayal and exhaustion spilling out. How could you sell the house? Without even telling me? My father avoided my eyes. My mother's lips pressed together, corners twitching as if rehearsing an excuse. It was necessary, she said softly, like that explanation would make sense. I felt nausea and anger twisting in my gut. Years of sacrifice, countless nights working overtime, and it all counted for nothing. The house, the place where I grew up, the place I thought was mine, as much as anyone's in this family, it had been ripped away. I sank into the nearest chair, heart hammering, tears threatening to spill. I looked around at the familiar walls, now tainted by deception. Liam sat there, smug and untouchable, the golden child who had always gotten away with everything. Soft cliffhanger. I realized then that this wasn't just about a house. This was about betrayal, favoritism, and a family that had finally shown its true colors, and I had no idea what to do next. The night after I found out, the house felt suffocating. Every corner whispered betrayal. I couldn't sleep, tossing and turning on my childhood bed, the one I thought would always be mine, no matter what. Memories of birthday mornings, snowball fights in the backyard, and summer nights on the porch, all of it tainted now. I could hear my parents downstairs, their muffled voices carrying a calm I envied, like they hadn't just destroyed me. Liam's laughter floated up from her room, carefree and oblivious. And I felt a rage I hadn't known existed. I decided I couldn't stay quiet any longer. I cornered my parents in the living room the next morning. How could you do this? I demanded, voice shaking between anger and disbelief. You didn't even tell me? My father sighed, rubbing his temples, like I was the problem here. We had to. It was the only way to manage things. Don't overreact. My mother's eyes glistened, but there was no real apology. Only excuses. We did what we had to do for the family. You'll understand one day. I wanted to scream at them, to shake them until they saw what they had done. Liam floated in the doorway, smirking. You're overreacting, you know, she said. It's just a house. You're always so dramatic about money and bills. Mom and Dad handled it like usual. That was the final straw. I felt every ounce of resentment I'd buried over the years bubble to the surface. Years of working double shifts, paying bills I shouldn't have had to, making sacrifices while she got nothing but praise it, all came crashing down in that single sentence. I left the room, slamming the door behind me, needing air, needing to think. Outside, the morning was cold, the wind biting at my cheeks. I felt smaller than I ever had, trapped in a home that no longer felt like mine. Surrounded by people who pretended my sacrifices were invisible. And yet, beneath the anger and despair, a strange determination began to form. Maybe I couldn't stop what they'd done, but I could control what came next. Soft cliffhanger. Realized then that this betrayal wasn't just about a house, It was a test. And I had no intention of losing again, no matter what it took. I spent days pacing my apartment, staring at my laptop, making calls, doing anything to wrap my head around what had happened. I felt like my world had been flipped upside down, and every familiar corner of the house I loved had been stolen from me. Then, out of nowhere, a call changed everything. It was from the real estate agent handling the sale. My heart raced. Actually, there's a clause in the contract, she said carefully, that allows the previous owner or a close family member to reclaim the property within 30 days if certain conditions aren't met. I froze. Could this really be happening? After everything's a betrayal, the endless sacrifices, the lies, there was a sliver of hope. My parents had sold it in secret, sure, but they had overlooked one critical detail. The buyer had agreed to a delayed closing period, and I could technically reverse it. My hands were shaking, my chest tight, but a strange exhilaration started to creep in. For the first time since I found out, I felt a sense of control. Then came the shock I hadn't expected. In reviewing the emails from the agent, I discovered something worse. Liam had been looped into the conversation about the sale. She had quietly urged my parents to push through without me, manipulating them with guilt and charm. My own sister had betrayed me too complicit in taking away everything I'd sacrificed for. My stomach lurched, bile rising. Everything I thought I knew about family loyalty had been a lie. I sank into a chair, staring at the ceiling, processing the double betrayal. The house was more than walls and memories now. It was a symbol of every injustice I'd endured. And suddenly, the idea of just walking away felt impossible. I realized then that I wasn't just angry, I was ready to fight. Not recklessly, not impulsively, but strategically. I could take back what was mine. Soft cliffhanger. I clenched my fists and whispered to myself, "You think you can take everything from me? You have no idea what's coming." After discovering the loophole, I knew I couldn't waste a single moment. Every hour counted. Every decision mattered. I started crunching numbers, figuring out loans, savings, and possible investors. I stayed up late at night, eyes burning from spreadsheets, phone calls, and legal jargon I barely understood. My apartment smelled of cheap takeout and coffee, the only fuel keeping me awake. For the first time, I felt like I wasn't just reacting, I was strategizing. Emotionally, it was exhausting. Part of me wanted to scream, to throw my phone across the room, to wake Liam and my parents and make them feel an ounce of the panic and betrayal I'd carried for weeks. But I knew that wouldn't get me anywhere. I needed control. I needed precision. Every text I sent, every call I made, was carefully calculated, a step closer to reclaiming my home. I was building a quiet army of paperwork, legal advice, and financial leverage. I couldn't help but replay every moment in my mind. My parents' dismissive smiles, Liam's careless laughter, the way they treated me like my work and loyalty were invisible, anger mixed with a deep, gnawing sadness. I realized that this wasn't just about the house anymore. It was about boundaries, respect, and proving to them and myself that I mattered. The thought of finally showing them that I wasn't just the responsible one they could exploit made my stomach tighten with both fear and exhilaration. Small victories began trickling in. An approving nod from a loan officer, a quick call from a lawyer, a crucial piece of paperwork I didn't expect. Each one was a reminder that maybe, just maybe, I could turn the tables. Liam's smugness, my parents' manipulations, they wouldn't matter forever. I could reclaim what was mine. I could do it without begging for their permission. A soft cliffhanger, but just as hope started to bloom. An unexpected obstacle appeared, one that made me question if I could really pull this off. Just when I thought I was gaining momentum, everything fell apart. The bank called in the middle of the night. "We're denying the loan," the officer said, voice flat. "The property doesn't meet our requirements for financing." I felt my chest collapse, like the floor had opened beneath me. Months of planning, sleepless nights, all my careful calculations gone in a single phone call. I sat on my couch, staring at the wall, hearing nothing but the echo of my own disbelief. Then my phone buzzed again. Text from Liam. "Careful, you don't want to make things worse. Mom and Dad are disappointed in your obsession with this house." I threw the phone across the room. Her smug face appeared in my mind, laughing entirely untouched by the chaos she had caused. I realized with sickening clarity that my parents weren't going to help, and my sister was actively working against me. Every ounce of trust I had left in my family felt like a lie. I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. Every memory of the house, the birthday mornings, the snow in the backyard, Dad teaching me to ride my bike felt tainted now, like they were mocking me. I even considered walking away, selling my own apartment, letting the house go. But the thought of letting them win, of letting Liam and my parents get away with this, made my stomach twist into knots of fury. The apartment felt suffocating. The cheap smell of takeout and stale coffee now suffocating me. I sat on the floor, knees pulled up, staring at the ceiling. Anger, grief, and desperation clawed at me all at once. I had hit the lowest point I could imagine, feeling powerless for the first time in years. Soft cliffhanger. And yet, somewhere deep down, a spark refused to die a small, burning certainty that I wasn't finished fighting. Not yet. I refused to let that despair define me. I took a deep breath, wiped my tears, and started looking for alternatives. If the bank wouldn't help, I'd find someone who would. I scoured online listings, reached out to private lenders, and even considered crowdfunding. Every rejection that had crushed me before now felt like a challenge to overcome rather than a final verdict. I poured myself into research, memorizing clauses, deadlines, and loopholes that could work in my favor. The fire inside me was different now. It wasn't blind rage anymore. It was cold, calculated determination. I pictured Liam's smug expression, my parents' dismissive smiles, and I imagined the look on their faces when they realized that this time I wasn't powerless. Every email I sent, every document I prepared, was a step closer to reclaiming what they thought they had stolen. I worked late into the night, surrounded by stacks of papers and the faint smell of ink. While the apartment was silent except for the hum of my computer, the stakes were high, and I knew it. My sister had already realized something was happening. She kept sending pointed texts, trying to intimidate me, trying to sow doubt. But her efforts only strengthened my resolve. I kept my head down, my plans secret, and my determination growing with every passing hour. I even found small victories, a lender willing to negotiate, a lawyer confirming my rights, and an unexpected loophole that made the original sale vulnerable. I could feel the momentum shifting. The power that had been stripped from me was slowly returning, quietly, methodically. I imagined walking back into that house, reclaiming the rooms, and finally confronting my family not in anger, but with authority and proof that I was no longer the responsible one to be manipulated. Every setback had sharpened me. Every sleepless night had built me up. Soft cliffhanger, and just when I thought I was ready to strike, an unexpected revelation appeared, one that would change the game entirely. The day I finalized the purchase felt surreal. I sat in the lawyer's office, hands trembling, heart hammering, as the documents were signed. This house, the place that had been stolen from me, the place I had thought I'd lost forever, was officially mine again. I held the deed in my hands like a trophy and felt a mix of relief, vindication, and an almost dizzying rush of power. Every late night, every sacrifice, every pang of betrayal, it had all led to this moment. Driving back to the neighborhood, I could barely contain myself. The familiar streets, the crackle of leaves under my tires, the scent of the pine trees along the sidewalk, it all hit me at once. I passed Liam's house and our parents' place, feeling a surge of control I'd never experienced. This wasn't about revenge yet. This was about reclaiming what was always mine. The house had stood there all along, silent and waiting. And now I had the legal power to lock the doors, to determine who could stay and who couldn't. I walked through the front door and breathed in the smell of the wood floors, the faint traces of candle wax from my mom, and the ghost of laughter from my childhood. This house wasn't just property, it was my history, my memories, my triumph over years of manipulation and neglect. I could almost hear the smugness of Liam fading away in my mind, replaced by my own quiet satisfaction. I began changing the locks, methodically, making sure that no one would be able to take it from me again. Even my parents called. their voices trembling with a mix of panic and disbelief. We didn't know you could do that," my father stammered. My mom's tone was softer, but no less desperate. "Sweetheart, can't we talk about this?" I just smiled under my breath. I didn't need to talk. I didn't need to explain. Actions spoke louder than words, and mine had already been decisive. Soft cliffhanger, for the first time in years. I felt completely in control, but I knew the real test was yet to come, confronting Liam and showing her that this time, she couldn't escape the consequences. I waited until late afternoon, just as the sun dipped low and cast long shadows across the yard, before calling Liam down to the living room. My hands were steady, but my heart thumped like a drum in my chest. She walked in, eyes wide, clearly sensing that something was different. "What is this?" she asked, voice tight. I didn't answer immediately. Instead, I held up the deed and placed it gently on the coffee table. "This," I said calmly, "is the house. It's mine. All of it." Her jaw dropped, and I could see the disbelief in my parents' faces behind her. "Wait, how?" Liam's voice wobbled, the arrogance and smugness gone. I looked her in the eyes. The same eyes that had dismissed my sacrifices for years, and I spoke slowly. Deliberately, you thought you could manipulate everyone, including Mom and Dad, to take what I worked for. You underestimated me. And now the house is legally mine. You can't stay here." The room went silent. The only sound was the faint hum of the air conditioner and the quickening of my own pulse. My parents started stammering, trying to justify themselves, but I shook my head. No excuses. I gave everything for this family for years. I paid your bills, covered your debts, and kept this home together while you took everything for granted. Not anymore. Liam's face twisted in panic, and she stepped back, suddenly aware that the golden child could lose everything. I took a deep breath and felt a rush of clarity. This wasn't about anger anymore. It was about justice, about boundaries, about proving that I wasn't someone to be walked over. Every insult, every dismissal, every late-night sacrifice, it all came together in this moment. I finally had the power to rewrite the rules in my favor. Soft cliffhanger. Liam froze. And for the first time, I saw fear in her eyes, fear that she would never forget. The same fear I had carried for years but now turned back on them. That night, I went through the house room by room, making sure every detail was in order. I changed the locks, cleaned the floors, and put up new security codes. It felt surreal, almost dreamlike. Walking through the rooms I had loved my entire life, now fully under my control. Liam paced back and forth in the living room, muttering, "You can't do this. This isn't fair." I didn't respond. I didn't need to. I had already won, legally and emotionally. The silence of the house contrasted sharply with the chaos in her eyes. For the first time, she experienced the panic I had felt when I discovered the betrayal. My parents hovered in the background, guilt and fear etched on their faces, unable to interfere. I stood tall, calm, and collected, finally embodying the power I'd lacked for so long. Every little injustice, every stolen moment of respect, had led me to this moment of quiet but undeniable triumph. I watched as Liam realized she had nowhere to go, no more access, no more privileges, no more ability to manipulate me or my parents. It was a slow, deliberate victory. I didn't need to yell. I didn't need to fight. The law and my preparation had done all the talking. The golden child had been dethroned, and I felt a deep, satisfying sense of justice settle over me. Walking through the rooms, smelling the familiar sense of homewood polish, old curtains, the faint trace of birthday candles, I allowed myself a small smile. This wasn't just about reclaiming property. It was about reclaiming respect, boundaries, and self-worth. I had taken control, and the lesson was clear. No one could take my life or my home from me without consequences. Soft cliffhanger. As I locked the front door for the last time that night, I realized something profound. This victory wasn't just for the house. It was for me finally proving that I could protect what was mine. The morning after, the house felt different. Not just mine legally, but mine emotionally. Sunlight streamed through the windows, casting warmth over the familiar walls that had witnessed so much of my childhood. I wandered through each room, running my hands along the banister, smelling the faint traces of Mom's candles and Dad's old polish, feeling a deep sense of ownership I'd never experienced before. It wasn't just about the property anymore. It was about reclaiming my life from years of manipulation, neglect, and betrayal. I thought about everything that had led to this moment, the sacrifices, the long nights, the endless bills I had paid, the emotional weight of watching my sister float through life untouched by responsibility. I realized I didn't carry that weight anymore. The fear, the resentment, the helplessness, it had all transformed into empowerment. I felt free in a way I hadn't in decades, like I was finally living for myself, rather than for a family that took me for granted. Even my parents and Liam were forced to see the consequences of their choices. The golden child dynamic, the favoritism, the manipulations, they no longer held power over me. I didn't need to punish them further. The lesson was clear. I could feel my confidence solidifying, a quiet strength that no betrayal could touch. The house had become a symbol not just of what I had reclaimed, but of who I had become. Resilient, smart, and unshakable, I made my way to the backyard. Looking at the familiar trees and the garden my father tended, I remembered my childhood laughter, the warmth of family gatherings, and I allowed myself to feel peace. This home, once stolen, now belonged to me in every sense. And for the first time in years, I felt safe, respected, and in control. A soft ending note. I finally understood that real victory isn't about revenge. It's about reclaiming yourself, setting boundaries, and living life on your own terms. And this time, I had done exactly that.